It was impossible, but he didn't know. Have you ever been told that something was impossible? That crushing moment when the world seems to close in around your dreams, when experts shake their heads and statistics pile up against you like an insurmountable wall? We've all been there. That sinking feeling in your stomach when reality appears to slap your aspirations right out of your hands. But what if I told you that sometimes, the greatest breakthroughs in human history happened precisely because someone didn't know they were attempting the impossible? What if ignorance, in its purest form, became the very fuel that powered extraordinary achievements? Today, I want to share with you a story that will fundamentally change how you view limitations, setbacks, and the word impossible itself. Picture this: a young man standing at the crossroads of his life, facing a challenge so daunting that seasoned professionals had already written it off as a fool's errand. The odds were stacked against him like a house of cards in a hurricane. Every logical voice around him whispered the same haunting refrain, "It can't be done." But here's the beautiful twist that makes this story so incredibly powerful: he had no idea just how impossible his dream really was. While others saw walls, he saw possibilities. While they calculated failure, he calculated hope. This wasn't naivety, this was pure, unadulterated determination meeting opportunity in the most unexpected way. And what happened next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about human potential. You see, we live in a world obsessed with expertise, where knowledge is power and information is king. We're constantly told to research, to analyze, to understand every angle before we leap. And while wisdom certainly has its place, there's something almost magical that happens when passion meets ignorance in the most beautiful way possible. It's in those moments when we don't know enough to be afraid that we often discover our greatest strengths. Think about your own life for a moment. When was the last time you held back because you knew too much about what could go wrong? When did your educated awareness of obstacles become the very thing that stopped you from even trying? This story isn't just about one man's journey, it's a mirror reflecting our own relationship with possibility and fear. The human spirit has an incredible ability to adapt, to push beyond perceived boundaries, and to achieve what seems utterly impossible when viewed through the lens of conventional wisdom. But here's what makes this particular story so compelling and universally relatable: it's not about superhuman abilities or extraordinary circumstances. It's about an ordinary person who stumbled upon an extraordinary mindset, the mindset of not knowing enough to quit. We've all experienced moments when ignorance was bliss, when not knowing the full scope of a challenge actually worked in our favor. Maybe it was learning to ride a bike without understanding the complex physics of balance, or starting a business without knowing the failure statistics. Sometimes, our lack of knowledge becomes our greatest asset. As you listen to this story unfold, I want you to think about those dreams you put on hold, those goals you've labeled as unrealistic, and those aspirations you've buried under the weight of what you've learned is impossible. Because what you're about to discover might just be the key that unlocks a door you didn't even know existed. This isn't just another motivational tale about overcoming odds. It's a profound exploration of how our relationship with knowledge and ignorance can either liberate us or imprison us. The man in our story didn't set out to prove anyone wrong or to make history. He simply didn't know enough to give up. And in that beautiful ignorance, he found something that all the experts and all their knowledge had missed entirely. Let me take you back to a moment that would define not just one life, but reshape our understanding of human possibility itself. You are about to witness the power of divine ignorance, that sacred space where knowledge ends and miracles begin. In the grand theater of human achievement, there are performers and there are legends. But every once in a while, someone steps onto the stage who doesn't even realize they're performing the impossible. They move with the confidence of someone who has never been told that their dream is a fantasy. You will see how the absence of limiting knowledge becomes the presence of unlimited potential. This is not just a story about success, this is a revelation about the very nature of breakthrough itself. And you, right now, are standing at the threshold of understanding something that will forever change how you approach your own impossible dreams. The year was significant, though our protagonist had no idea he was about to make history. You need to understand that this wasn't someone born with extraordinary advantages or supernatural abilities. He was ordinary in every sense that mattered to the outside world. But inside him burned something that no amount of education could extinguish and no amount of expertise could diminish, the pure flame of untainted ambition. He looked at his challenge the way a child looks at a locked door, not as an insurmountable barrier, but as an invitation to find the key. While seasoned professionals calculated probabilities and mapped out why his goal was mathematically impossible, he was busy taking the first step. You see, he had something they didn't have, the blessing of not knowing it couldn't be done. And that blessing was about to move mountains. Now, I want you to imagine standing in his shoes for a moment. You have a vision so clear it keeps you awake at night, so compelling it pulls you forward despite every rational voice telling you to stop. The experts have spoken. The data has been analyzed. The verdict is unanimous: impossible. But here's where the story takes a turn that will send chills down your spine. He never asked the experts. He never looked at the data. He never sought permission from the guardians of conventional wisdom. Instead, he did something so simple yet so profound that it would later be studied by scholars and celebrated by dreamers around the world. He simply began. Not with arrogance, but with innocence. Not with rebellion, but with pure intention. And in that beginning, the impossible started to crack its first smile. What happened next defies every rule written in every textbook about human limitations. You are about to witness the moment when ignorance transformed into insight, when naivety became innovation, and when one person's refusal to accept impossible as an answer rewrote the very definition of possible. The establishment watched in bewilderment as their carefully constructed walls of impossibility crumbled before someone who didn't even know the walls existed. This is where you'll understand that sometimes the greatest discoveries aren't made by those who know the most, but by those who are willing to explore what others have already dismissed. His journey from this point forward reads like a prophecy fulfilling itself, a testament to the power of divine ignorance meeting human determination. And you, witnessing this unfold, will never again look at your own challenges the same way. The most beautiful part of this revelation is that he didn't set out to prove anyone wrong or to challenge the status quo. He was simply following a calling that spoke louder than the voices of doubt and limitation. You will see how his innocence became his strength, how his lack of knowledge became his greatest asset, and how his willingness to attempt the impossible became the very thing that made it possible. This is the moment where everything you thought you knew about achievement, success, and human potential gets turned upside down. The impossible wasn't impossible at all, it was simply waiting for someone who didn't know enough to be afraid of it. And that someone was about to change everything, one impossible step at a time. What you're about to discover will haunt your excuses and inspire your courage in ways you never thought possible. His name was Roger Bannister, and on a cold, windy day in Oxford, England, he was about to shatter one of humanity's most sacred barriers. For decades, the 4-minute mile had stood as an insurmountable wall in the world of athletics. Medical experts declared it physiologically impossible, claiming the human heart would explode under such strain. Sports scientists calculated that the human body had reached its absolute limit at 4:01. Newspapers wrote articles about the mythical 4-minute barrier as if it were a law of physics itself. But Roger had something the experts didn't have. He was a medical student who believed more in human potential than in human limitations. He saw the 4-minute mile not as a ceiling, but as a door waiting to be opened. While others studied why it couldn't be done, he studied how it could be done. The difference in perspective would change history forever. The morning of May 6, 1954, was far from ideal for breaking records. The wind howled across the Iffley Road track with a ferocity that would have sent most runners home. Weather conditions were so poor that postponing seemed like the only logical choice. But Roger looked at those impossible conditions and made a decision that would echo through eternity. He chose to run anyway. You see, he understood something profound about greatness: it rarely arrives under perfect circumstances. While fair-weather dreamers wait for ideal conditions, legends create their own weather. The wind that was meant to hold him back became the very force that would push him into immortality. As he laced up his spikes that day, he carried with him not the weight of impossibility, but the lightness of someone who simply refused to accept that it couldn't be done. The crowd that gathered was small, unaware they were about to witness one of the most significant moments in human achievement. Roger stood at the starting line, his heart pounding not with fear, but with anticipation. He had trained his body, but more importantly, he had trained his mind to ignore the voices of limitation. Every step he had taken in preparation had been guided by a simple philosophy: if you don't know it's impossible, then it isn't. The starting gun cracked through the Oxford air like thunder, and with it, Roger began his assault on the impossible. His first lap was perfectly paced, his breathing controlled, his stride confident. While spectators held their breath, he ran with the calm assurance of someone following a predetermined destiny. The impossible barrier that had haunted mankind for so long was about to meet its match. As Roger rounded the track, something magical began to happen. Time seemed to bend around his determination, and the laws of physics appeared to negotiate with his will. Each stride carried him deeper into uncharted territory, into a realm where only the impossible dwellers. His competitors fell behind, not because they lacked talent, but because they carried the weight of knowing it couldn't be done. Roger ran free from that burden, his ignorance of limitation transforming into wings beneath his feet. The crowd began to sense something extraordinary was unfolding. Whispers turned to cheers, and cheers turned to roars of disbelief. With each passing second, the impossible was becoming inevitable. The barrier that had stood for so long was cracking, and everyone present could feel the very foundations of human limitation beginning to tremble. The third lap was where legends are born and impossibilities die. Roger's pace never wavered, his focus never broke, his belief never faltered. While medical experts had predicted his heart would explode, it beat with the steady rhythm of destiny itself. His legs, which science claimed would fail him, carried him with increasing power toward his date with history. The timekeeper's hands trembled as they watched the seconds tick by, knowing they were witnessing something that would rewrite textbooks and reshape human understanding. Roger wasn't just running against the clock, he was running against centuries of accepted limitation. Every breath he took was a declaration of war against impossibility. Every step was a testament to the power of not knowing enough to quit. The finish line ahead wasn't just a marker on a track, it was a gateway to a new era of human potential. Then came the final lap, the moment when impossibility would either claim its victory or surrender to human will. The crowd rose to their feet as one, sensing the magnitude of what was unfolding before their eyes. Roger's face showed no strain, no desperation, only the serene confidence of someone who had never been told what he was attempting couldn't be done. His final sprint was poetry in motion, a masterpiece painted with sweat, determination, and beautiful ignorance of limitation. The finish line rushed toward him like destiny itself, and as he crossed it, the world held its breath. The official timekeeper stared at his stopwatch in disbelief, checking it once, twice, 3 times before making the announcement that would change everything. 3 minutes, 59.4 seconds. The 4-minute mile was dead, killed by a man who didn't know it was supposed to be immortal. The moment Roger collapsed across the finish line, gasping for air but smiling with triumph, something fundamental shifted in human consciousness. The impossible barrier that had stood for so long crumbled not gradually, but instantly and completely. Medical experts who had declared it physiologically impossible suddenly found themselves scrambling to explain how the impossible had just become reality. Sports scientists revised their calculations, newspapers rewrote their headlines, and the entire world was forced to confront a startling truth. The only thing that had made the 4-minute mile impossible was the collective belief that it was impossible. Roger hadn't just broken a record, he had broken the spell of limitation itself. In that single moment of triumph, he had proven that the human spirit, unburdened by the knowledge of its supposed limitations, could achieve anything it set its mind to accomplish. But here's where the story becomes even more extraordinary, where the true power of Roger's achievement reveals itself in ways that would astound even him. Within just 46 days of his impossible feat, another runner named John Landy also broke the 4-minute barrier. Within 1 year, 3 more runners had accomplished the impossible. Within 3 years, 17 runners had shattered what was once considered an unbreakable limit. The dam had burst, and a flood of impossibility breakers followed in Roger's wake. You see, Roger hadn't just proven that the 4-minute mile could be broken, he had shattered the mental barrier that had kept it intact for so long. Once humanity saw it was possible, it became inevitable. The only thing that had made it impossible was the collective agreement that it was impossible. Roger's beautiful ignorance had set an entire generation free. The ripple effects of that day in Oxford continue to wash over us even now, decades later. Roger's achievement became a metaphor for every impossible dream, every unreachable goal, every barrier that stands between humanity and its potential. His story whispers to every dreamer who has been told their vision is too big, their goal too ambitious, their hope too naive. It speaks to the part of us that knows, deep down, that the only limits that truly exist are the ones we accept in our minds. Roger's legacy isn't just about running fast, it's about running free from the prison of other people's limitations. He showed us that sometimes the greatest discoveries aren't made by those who know the most about why something can't be done, but by those who know just enough about how it might be done to try anyway. His ignorance became humanity's liberation. What makes Roger's story so universally powerful is that it mirrors every breakthrough in human history. The Wright brothers didn't know that human flight was impossible according to the scientific community of their time, they just knew they wanted to fly. Thomas Edison didn't know that creating the light bulb was impossible after 1,000 failures, he just knew he hadn't found the way yet. Marie Curie didn't know that women weren't supposed to win Nobel Prizes, she just knew she loved science. Throughout history, the greatest leaps forward have been taken by people who were ignorant enough of their limitations to ignore them completely. They possessed what Roger possessed that day in Oxford, the divine ignorance that transforms impossibility into inevitability. Their lack of knowledge about why it couldn't be done became their greatest asset in figuring out how it could be done. The most beautiful aspect of Roger's achievement is how it reveals the true nature of human potential. For years, runners had been limited not by their physical capabilities, but by their mental acceptance of limitation. The 4-minute barrier existed first and foremost in their minds, and their bodies simply followed suit. But when Roger ran that day, unburdened by the weight of impossibility, his body was free to express its true potential. He didn't develop superhuman abilities overnight, he simply stopped accepting subhuman limitations. The same legs that had carried him before carried him faster because his mind had finally given them permission to do so. This is the profound lesson hidden within his story. Our greatest limitations are often not physical, but psychological. We don't need to become more than human to achieve the impossible, we just need to stop being less than human by accepting artificial barriers as real. Roger's story also reveals something crucial about the nature of expertise and knowledge. While the medical experts were busy explaining why the 4-minute mile was impossible, they missed something fundamental. The human body is not a machine with fixed specifications, but a dynamic system capable of adaptation and transcendence. Their knowledge, while valuable in many contexts, became a cage when it transformed from information into limitation. Roger's ignorance of their conclusions allowed him to discover what their expertise had obscured. This doesn't mean knowledge is bad, it means that knowledge without wisdom can become a barrier to breakthrough. The key is knowing when to listen to the experts and when to trust the voice within that whispers, "But what if they're wrong?" Roger trusted that whisper, and it led him to immortality. The transformation that occurred in Roger during those 3 minutes and 59 seconds wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. He entered that race as a talented runner with a big dream, but he emerged as living proof that impossibility is often just possibility in disguise. His victory wasn't just over time and distance, it was over the collective consciousness that had accepted limitation as law. In those final strides toward the finish line, he was running not just for himself, but for every dreamer who had ever been told to be realistic, every visionary who had been advised to lower their expectations, every revolutionary who had been counseled to accept the status quo. His legs carried the hopes of humanity itself, and when he crossed that line, he carried all of us with him into a new realm of possibility where the impossible was just another word for not yet achieved. The moment Roger gasped across that finish line, he didn't just break a record, he broke a spell that had been cast over human consciousness. The 4-minute mile had been more than a physical barrier, it had been a symbol of human limitation itself. Medical experts had declared it dangerous, sports scientists had deemed it impossible, and athletes had accepted it as fact. But Roger's beautiful ignorance of these facts allowed him to write a new truth with his feet. His achievement sent shockwaves through every field of human endeavor because it proved a fundamental principle: the limits we accept become the limits we experience. The barriers we believe in become the barriers that contain us. Roger's story is ultimately about the power of believing in possibility even when possibility seems impossible, of maintaining faith in potential even when potential seems fantasy. As Roger lay on the track that day, surrounded by officials confirming the impossible time, he had no idea that he had just changed the trajectory of human achievement forever. His personal victory had become humanity's liberation. The barrier that had stood like an immovable mountain for decades had crumbled in less than 4 minutes, not because human physiology had suddenly evolved, but because human psychology had finally been set free. Roger's achievement would inspire countless others to question their own accepted limitations, to challenge their own impossible barriers, to run their own races against impossibility. He had proven that sometimes the most powerful thing you can possess is not knowledge of why something can't be done, but ignorance of why it can't be done, combined with absolute determination to do it anyway. His legacy would echo through time, reminding every generation that impossibility is often just possibility wearing a disguise. So I ask you now, as you sit here absorbing the power of Roger's story, what impossible dream are you carrying in your heart? What 4-minute mile is waiting for you to attempt it with beautiful ignorance of its supposed impossibility? Perhaps it's that business you've always wanted to start but have been told the market is too saturated. Maybe it's that book you've longed to write but have been convinced nobody would read. It could be that relationship you've given up on, that skill you've deemed yourself too old to learn, or that goal you've labeled as unrealistic. Roger's story is calling to that part of you that still believes in miracles, that still dares to dream beyond the boundaries of conventional wisdom. You have within you the same power that carried Roger across that finish line, the power to ignore the voices of limitation and listen instead to the whisper of possibility. Your impossible dream is not impossible, it's simply waiting for you to stop knowing enough to be afraid of it. The beautiful truth that Roger revealed is that most of our limitations exist not in reality, but in our acceptance of other people's definitions of reality. The experts who declared the 4-minute mile impossible weren't lying, they were simply trapped by their own knowledge, imprisoned by their own expertise. But you have something they didn't have. You have Roger's example showing you that impossibility is often just possibility wearing a disguise. Every barrier that stands before you today was once considered unbreakable by someone, somewhere. Every breakthrough in human history was achieved by someone who didn't know enough to accept the status quo as permanent. You are not bound by the limitations that others have accepted. You are not constrained by the fears that others have embraced. You have been given the same gift that Roger possessed that day in Oxford, the gift of being able to attempt the impossible with the innocence of not knowing it's impossible. Faith is not the absence of doubt, faith is the decision to act despite doubt. Roger didn't run that day because he was certain he would succeed, he ran because he was certain he had to try. That same faith lives within you right now, waiting to be awakened, waiting to carry you toward your own impossible finish line. The voice that whispers you can't is the same voice that told Roger he couldn't, that told every dreamer throughout history they couldn't. But there's another voice, quieter but infinitely more powerful, that whispers, "But what if you can?" That voice is calling to you right now, inviting you to step onto your own track, to face your own impossible mile, to discover what lies beyond the boundaries of what you've been told is possible. You don't need superhuman abilities to achieve the impossible, you just need to stop accepting subhuman limitations. You don't need to become more than human, you just need to stop being less than human by accepting artificial barriers as real. The moment you decide to attempt your impossible dream, you join a sacred brotherhood of impossibility breakers that stretches back through history. You become part of Roger's legacy, part of every dreamer who ever dared to ignore the experts and trust their heart instead. Your attempt may not make headlines, but it will make history, your personal history, your family's history, your legacy's history. The world needs your impossible dream to become possible, because your breakthrough will give others permission to attempt their own. Just as Roger's achievement created a domino effect that freed countless other runners, your victory over impossibility will inspire others to question their own accepted limitations. You are not just running for yourself, you are running for everyone who has ever been told their dream is too big, their goal too ambitious, their hope too naive. Your impossible mile is waiting for you. The only question that remains is, will you run it? Thank you from the bottom of my heart for staying with me through this incredible journey of discovery. If Roger Bannister's story has ignited something within you, if it has awakened that sleeping giant of possibility that lives in your soul, then this message has fulfilled its purpose. But don't let this inspiration end here, let it be the starting gun for your own impossible race. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, someone who has their own 4-minute mile waiting to be conquered. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories that will challenge your limitations and expand your possibilities. And remember, the next time someone tells you something is impossible, you can smile and think of Roger Bannister running through that Oxford wind, proving that sometimes the most powerful thing you can possess is not knowing that your dream can't come true. Your impossible moment is waiting. The only question is, are you ready to run?